Hey there, I think we're ready to go. Welcome back to my live stream. My name is Jeff Fritz. Thanks so much for tuning in. It's July 10th, 2018. And hey, good morning there, F. Boucheros in the chat room. We're going to write some code today. We're going to write a little bit of code together, a little bit of C#, and I want to talk about repository pattern today. We've been doing some work together on a project, our core Wiki project. That's an ASP.NET Core website that's designed to work on Windows, Mac, or Linux, but and is designed to be a content management system, a wiki, and it's supposed to be very simple, and we've become very coupled to our object relational mapper tool. And we're going to start to introduce a repository pattern today based on a pull request that we received in that open source project, and see what we can do to make that a little bit easier to maintain and change database providers going forward. So let's get some music started here in the background. I always like to have music playing. It helps to keep us focused. This is music to code by from our friend Carl Franklin, and I'm going to play a song today called Orange. And this music is designed to get us focused, get us in the groove, so that you get in that flow where everything just feels good and you're extremely focused on whatever it is that you're working on. So that's right, C17, take two. And we're hosted, I see there, by our friend Lita Gemini. Thanks so much for the host. And we're gonna get into a little bit of this refactoring. Now, of course, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. There was a bit of buzz that I created on Twitter. Our friend Just Call Me AD in let me go back here in GitHub. Saw us talk about the just works on my machine concept, the problem there, and put together a mock-up of a coffee mug with my face on it, my caricature on it, saying works on my machine, and even went further and grabbed a mock-up of a hat with the same logo on it, and I dropped a reference to this out on Twitter. And a lot of folks were interested. Hey, where can I get a sticker? Where can I get that coffee mug? So I signed up for Redbubble and sent the image over there. And so if you go to redbubble.com/people/C#Fritz, and you'll be able to get it on phone cases, get it on mugs, laptop skins. Get 10% off if you sign up for their mailing list, and even stickers. Now, the stickers are 3-inch stickers. They're pretty big stickers. I'm going to work with another vendor to see if I can get a collection of stickers, but I'm working on a logo, some other things here. But some folks were interested in getting this works on my machine printed on mugs, stickers. There you go. That's available to you. So redbubble.com/people/C#Fritz, you can find that. So it's available. Now, I'm gonna work on that a little bit more, see what other logos and things we can get over there if folks are interested. Fritz Carnival. I don't know. Another comment that we saw out on Twitter this week is from our friend Ben Adams. Now, Ben works on performance tuning the ASP.NET Core web server, and he submitted a new round of testing to Tech Empower that looks like it's mostly ASP.NET. And at the top you have ASP.NET Core running on C#, but the second one is ASP.NET Core running with Visual Basic. And it's about half the speed. There's some memory optimization things that are a little bit trickier to do with Visual Basic, but it's about half the speed of the full 7 million requests per second running C#, but running VB with ASP.NET Core, and here's Node down here for a reference, is roughly 4 times faster than ASP.NET Core than Node, right? That's impressive. So check that out. More from Ben Adams as he works to tune that. Yeah, people are freaking out. What do you mean Visual Basic is 4 times faster than JavaScript? So, yes, I'm wearing my Monsters University hat today because this is going to be a monster of a refactoring we're going to do into the repository pattern. So there you go. Ben's working on more cool things out there. Kudos to Ben. Thanks so much for your contributions to the community. He's really doing some neat things out there with tuning the web server. And I've got my dad mug today. Look at that, dad character builder. My kids ran off with my other more favorite mugs, my Microsoft Learning mug. I tell you. So I took the dad mug today. All right. So over here, what do we have here? Oh, there's Visual Studio hosting my stream. Thanks so much, Visual Studio. So hyped for today, but it went to ground fast. Uh-oh. Is the World Cup match should be starting, right? Hey, Ashley. All right. I saw Ashley had a couple of refactorings here for us in the Core Wiki project as well. World Cup is tomorrow. Okay. Then what happened, Janesco? Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. We've got another day into the World Cup. Phew. Oh, the Surface thing. Full disclosure, I do not work on the hardware teams at Microsoft. I have no insight, no input into that. I didn't think there was a game today. Oh, today is the one semifinal. Okay. And that's a little bit later, isn't it? So I have no input, no direction that I can set, and I have no insight into anything going on with the hardware. But the new Surface Go device that they're touting looks like a nice little tablet. I don't have a use for a little tablet. I'm over the netbook craze, right? The little mini $200 Windows running laptop. It doesn't do anything for me. But I do like my Surface Pro. It's a nice device, nice and portable. I have a Surface Pro 3, but the Surface Go, for what I do, it doesn't do anything for me. I would have the talk around a Surface phone was interesting, was different, was something that we haven't seen before, was innovative. We'll see if the team decides to move forward with that. I think there's a place for something like that. I loved my Windows phone. I don't see it. I used to have it here. There it is. So I still have my... It's got a broken screen, but there's my Nokia phone from Verizon. A little dusty, but thought that was a really cool device. The Windows Phone really did everything that I needed in the base operating system, and there wasn't too much of a need to get into many other applications. I liked having that tile interface, and I'm starting to see that come back with the People bar in Windows 10, but we'll see. We'll see. There's a lot of time left in the year here. Surface Go isn't a portable device. Why isn't it a portable device? It's a tablet with a keyboard cover that attaches. Oh shoot, my tablet's over there on my chair. Not a pocket device. Yes, I'll agree with that. It is not a pocket device. Coming soon, Windows 10 ported to Blazor running in Chromebook. No. We're not going that far. Alright, so there's a number of pull requests here for Core Wiki. And I may do the first one here, and I'm going to hold off on these other ones. Ashley's done a great job here to try and minimize some of the issues that we've been running into with migrations, kind of breaking and rebuilding the application each time. Hey, Joe Bun, good to see you. But I think what we're going to do is, and there's a great suggestion from Ashley over here on the issues. I really like this this discussion here, and I think this is something that we should consider. Following the lead of things like WordPress, where we should probably have a first start wizard. Give us, when you first start the application, give us the ability to configure some of the various features at that time. Things like that default homepage, some of the other seed data. Let's actually prompt and build that out at that time. And Ashley's actually started on a little bit of this. Where did it go? There was another discussion around it here, and first user is not an administrator. And I started adding a project here for this, and I think we need to move this other. Let me move this here into the mix as well. Let's bring this over. Cool. All right. And I think Ashley's actually working on this one right now, and this one. So we'll go through those in the next, if we have time here after we go through this refactoring, because this repository pattern refactoring here from emo, it's significant. There's a lot of files changed there. Looks like Dev Chatter's hosting us. Don't know why the alert didn't pop up, but thank you, Dev Chatter, for the host. Let's see. Gwynereth. Hello. Welcome. Unnamed Outsider. Looks like you do have a name, Unnamed Outsider, but welcome. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate you joining us here. 7 to 8 inch device can fit in some pockets. I have an iPhone 7 Plus. It fits nicely in my pocket, takes up just about the whole pocket, and on a winter day keeps me nice and warm. It's not bad. All right, let's get into this. Let's start examining exactly what's going on here. I'm thrilled. We crossed 2,700 followers since our last stream on Saturday. We had a lot of folks click through and follow. Thank you so much, all of our new followers, for joining us. I appreciate all of you taking the time and showing some interest in the stream here. And of course, if you're watching us on YouTube, hello YouTube. Go ahead and click the subscribe button. There's a bell there in the corner you can hit. Hey, or you can subscribe here on Twitch like Chris does. See what I did there? That was okay. And I don't know Chris, but thank you for the follow, Chris. If follow us over there on YouTube, of course you'll get notifications when new videos like this one are available. But if you tune in on Twitch, like the 60-some folks are right now, you can ask questions and have a good time working together on this. Oh, Ashley's brought it up. There it is. So here's the question. And I'm going to credit Claire with this. Is Claire here? I don't see Claire. So yes, here it is. So the question was so we put the image out for the stickers, for the mug, if you want to get that made. My sister can print and do those things, and she's putting together a mug for me. And Claire said, I want to be able to color that in. I want to be able to have, and she had all these funky colors she wanted to make on the sticker, including a rainbow goatee. And the discussion, and I've got to show this. the discussion turned to... Thank you, F. Boucheros. Is that what... Do you want me to just call you Boucheros? Let me know, how should I refer to you there, F. Boucheros? And let me know if I'm pronouncing it correctly as well. So let me go to the replies here also. Over here. Come on, where is it? So, Just Ask Claire wrote, scrap that, rainbow goatee, neon green outer gear, and a thermoreactive cup that goes from periwinkle blue to Barbie pink when filled with coffee. And I wrote, that's colorful, rainbow goatee, and it's apparently all the rage. Thank you, Ryan, for the follow. So, I haven't even talked to the wife about this yet. Frank, okay. No problem, Frank. Hey, NAR003. And it's NAR003 because NAR001 and 002 are already out there. And the 00 Club means that NAR003 can carry a weapon. It's licensed to kill. Am I right, NAR? Let me know. Hey, Welsh Ronaldo. So what Ashley and EM Triple are hinting at is I said, do I do a thing? Do I make this a thing? And if we get to 5,000 followers by the middle of October, do I do a Halloween stream with a rainbow goatee? Yeah, hey, Namanja. Yeah, Frank. Oh, I don't know. Does this become a thing? Will my wife kill me? I don't know. What a mess. I know. When at first you open your mouth. Is NAR 001 and 002 out there? I don't know. I thought that's why you chose 003. So I don't... Should we do a rainbow goatee thing? Hair grows back. That's the other thing is... my friend Tasha said, oh my gosh, here's some place professional that'll actually do this, and then you're gonna have to shave it off afterwards. Oh my gosh, if I shaved my goatee off? Oh my gosh. At least you've got some months to think about it. Well, if I'm putting the challenge out there, I want to make sure, and I want to make sure nobody's stuffing the bag here, going and creating dummy accounts. Hey, there's our friend Kevin Griffin. So, I don't know. Do I do the rainbow goatee challenge? It took us 7 months to get to 2,700 followers. Can we double it by October? Yes. Oh, this is going to be a problem. Put a deadline on it. Exactly. I would say October 20. Let's talk to the wife. I see what you did there, Ashley. I'll commit to helping you pull it off. Oh my gosh, listen to Kevin. We should totally go for it. I think you'd use eyeliner. It's not... No, Frank. No, bad idea. So the wife is teaching this morning. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get her attention. Got to get the Scots to start tweeting my stream. Oh, I've already got Visual Studio hosting me. For my bear? What bear? Meaning that you go for it and we see you. Well, why not double it? Moore's Law says you can. What do you mean? Right. Doubling effectively the number of followers that we have here. If we get to 5,000... Oh, is that who that is? Okay. Is freelancing difficult to do? It can be, but typically in our industry, you won't find people freelancers they're held to a slightly different standard than full-time employees. Could raise donations for Girl Develop It. I've got other other things that we're gonna do there. So, let me think about that. I'll get back to you on Thursday. But I think there's something here. This one's just obnoxious. Eyeliner in your beard. No. Not happening, Frank. No. Alright. Back to the code here. So, join me on Thursday and we'll talk more about the Rainbow Beard Challenge. You're in my right ear, not the left, as I'm just lurking. Okay. Well, Brave Cobra, I'm actually going to go through just what you have here to update to the latest NuGet packages using .NET Outdated. And taking a quick look here, it looks like we updated to the latest version of the Test SDK. Humanizer goes up a couple, and Web Essentials ASP.NET Core PWA goes up a couple patch levels as well. Rainbow Beard beats a tattoo. Oh, dev lead. Don't even go there. Is there a tattoo at 10K? No. No. No.
Do it!
No. No. Okay. This looks like a pretty harmless change, and look at that. Hey, DevLead, check that out. I wired up AppFair. So we're now using DevLead's cake build script and testing to test all of our pull requests, and it passed successfully here. So I'm just going to do a simple squash and merge here because I know that it didn't break anything to upgrade and use the latest NuGet packages. So thanks for looking into this and passing along the updates. All right. Could paint the goatee green and green screen any color you want. That's interesting. The thing about doing a rainbow goatee, though, is you have to dye it blonde first before you put the funky colors in it. And I've already got a little bit of gray in there. Maybe on my forehead. Stop it. Get the C# bot tat for 10K. Hey Fritz, is there any guide for .NET Conf for speakers? How technical or what level should talks be? I'm convincing a friend to talk at it. He's done it before. What have I done before? Okay, hang on a second. Hang on. So let me. First things first. Let's go to papercall.io for .NET Conf. There are guidelines for the submissions here. There's a description and a list of example topics. I'd be looking for 200 to 300 level talks. So intermediate to advanced level talks. Don't submit a beginner's guide to a Microsoft product because I literally have the product team giving talks as well. Don't submit to me, introduction to using ASP.NET Core with Kubernetes. I've literally got the ASP.NET Core Kubernetes program manager who can jump on the show. But if you go here, papercrawl.io.netconf-2018, here's some simple guidelines and the topic areas that we're looking for the event. So, and you should see, there I am. I'm in the list of folks here. But go ahead and submit, and I can, of course, give you feedback if you have some questions here on the stream. He's done what before? You have washable colors, so no problem. I can shave. There's another thing, right? Maybe I talked to our friends at Harry's about shaving my beard after it's done. No. Colored your beard. No, I haven't colored my beard before. NuGet interface in Visual Studio will do the same thing. You can do the same on the CLI. Yes. A tattoo with the name of the top contributor at 10K? No. Okay. But the rainbow beard, I don't think that's too bad a deal here. All right, so let's look at the next one here, and this is from Emo using the repo pattern. Now, the repo is short for repository for the non-English first speakers out there. You'll see me use repo, R-E-P-O, short for repository, when I declare variables and the like. The problem that we've started running into is that the logic, the concepts, the abstraction that Entity Framework provides in our application is leaking more and more into our views, into our controllers, and we're becoming a little bit wrapped up in that as we look forward to perhaps switching out to a more robust data provider. Right now we're using just SQLite so we can get off the ground and get running. But in the future, if we want to swap out to SQL Server, Cosmos DB, or even if we wanted to statically generate some of our wiki pages and save them off into Azure Storage or some other static file repository, the way that we're interacting with the database right now is tightly coupled not just to Entity Framework, but to the SQLite provider. And some of the comments that you saw from Ashley around default homepage and migrations in First Start Wizard is because we're running into database updates, and the SQLite database provider doesn't handle those schema changes particularly well. The alter table statement doesn't work in SQLite. It's just easier to cut a new version of the database. And if you've got some sample data already sitting in a database and you're breaking it because you're changing the table structure, it becomes a pain in the neck. So to abstract away that reference so that we can start building things a little bit more robustly without directly coupling our controllers, our notification mechanisms to the SQLite and Entity Framework implementation, we're going to implement a repository pattern. Now, the repository pattern is a way for us to be able to, from our controllers, from our models and views, be able to work directly with plain old CLR objects or POCOs. And the only time that they're converted and used for database interactions and they have anything really database-centric about them is at the point that they enter the repository. So that's what we're trying to alleviate here, and that's the model that we're going after. The other thing this gives us also is we can cut repository implementations that are specific for different storage providers that we may use in the future. So Cosmos DB, Azure Storage, SQL Server, MongoDB, an Oracle database, whatever it is we decide to use, JSON files on disk, we'll be able to have a repository implementation that's specific for that type of provider. Thanks for the follow, Dr. Moulis. I appreciate that. Are we implementing a data mapper for the repository pattern? Not yet. Let's see here. Just catching up on the chat room. Standby Reloading says, I wrote SQLite migration code. It works as close to EF migrations as I could, but much, much simpler. Cool. I believe they are working around SQLite incompatibilities, but it's not a priority issue at current. Agreed. What's the closest conference in the near future, asks Trapoff. The closest conference that I'm speaking at? Or give me a little bit of background there, Trapoff. What do you mean by closest conference? The next conference that you'll find me speaking at will be the .NET Conf event at the beginning of September. That's a virtual event that we're going to be hosting from the Microsoft Studios in Seattle, but everybody will be able to tune in on the .NET Conf website and on the Visual Studio Twitch channel. There's going to be 2 days going 9 to 5 broadcast live from Seattle, a number of Microsoft folks participating. On the third day is Community Day, and it's going to be a 24-hour broadcast live on twitch.tv/Visual Studio, and folks from every time zone will be presenting, some in their own native languages. So I think it'll be really cool. I meant just in general about .NET. The next event about just .NET, if there's .NET Conf, Microsoft Ignite, you see it over there. I'll be speaking there. The Tech Bash is more of a general topic. KCDC in Kansas City is Friday, Thursday and Friday this week. And actually, I need to move our workshop. Some of the speakers that I've recruited for it are actually going to be at KCDC, and we're not going to be able to make it here. Dibiendo, I hope I pronounced that right. Thank you for the follow. So let's start pulling this apart. Let's look at all the work here. And the reason I say this is a big change is because there's 48 files in here that are being touched. Because what Emo, and it's EM Triple, I believe, in the chat room, has done, it has really gone around and abstracted away the direct references to our entity framework context in all of our pages throughout the application. There's just in general, one of the .NET sites with conferences and talks. Yeah, let me talk to John about that. Actually, let me see if I can raise him. Is there a website with .NET conferences listed? All right. Ghoul Devil Ape, thank you for the follow. Discover Dotton. Okay, cool. Oh, I did get it right. Dibiendu. Okay, cool. So let's start taking a look at what Emo has, the changes that he's made here, because there's a lot. And I could squash and merge, and it even though it did build successfully on AppVer, there's a lot going on in here, and I do want to pull this down and work on it locally, just so we understand the changes that are being made and review some of the things that are going on here. There is on the edit page a slight change that looks like we still need to go through here, and we need to work on how to seed our data again. So let's take a look. So check this out. I've wired up my caps lock key on my keyboard so that it opens up the command prompt, because I never use caps lock. So I thought that was kind of cool to be able to remap that key. All right, I'm going to jump over to the dev branch, because that's where I start. Make sure I have all the latest, and now I'm going to paste in that checkout command so we get all the latest updates. I mean, wow, there's a lot of files in here that have been changed, including migrations. So let's go through. Let's start taking a look. And I already see Core Wiki Data. There's a Core Wiki Data project I see here that has some of those repositories defined. And I worry that interfaces are in the same project as the initial repositories, because the interfaces are something that we're going to generically reference in our project, and those repositories will sneak in as concrete references. Safety first. Yes, unnamed outsider. I totally agree, right? I need like a life jacket or something that I can put on when I'm reviewing pull requests here, right? That'd be kind of funny. Interfaces for your repositories should be in the business project. Yes. So let's take a look at what we got here. That's the wrong project. Click too fast. This is the Stream Tools project. I saw that there is even separate project for them. It's a start. It's a move in the right direction. There it is. I just think it may be in the wrong place. They might be the correct implementation of those repositories. We may want to move it so that it's more generically accessible as we start to move logic into other projects. But let's take a look. Nothing says it's wrong. For future maintenance, it may be easier to relocate to somewhere else. So here's core wiki data and core wiki test. Test is where our unit tests live. So we have data and we have models. Under data, we have interfaces, and we have 3 interfaces right now: an article repository, a comment repository, and the slug history. The slug is the HTTP encoded, HTTP URL encoded. That's what I'm thinking. The URL encoded and denormalized title of our articles so that it's easier to locate them. The slug history is simply keeping track of those so that we can appropriately remap requests from an older page name to the new page name. While the business layer can get bloated, I don't think you need to create a bunch of mini projects just to house interfaces. Agreed. I think, though, that there could be a core project where some of these common things can get moved to. And I'm not going to obsess about moving these right now, but I think it's something we should note, because as we move forward, while these are SQLite repositories, when we go to bring in the MongoDB repository flavor, we'll want that living. We won't want to put that in this same project. We may have a corewiki.data.mongodb project, and we'll want to minimize the amount of things that we reference in order to have that. Having abstractions in their own assembly with no dependencies would be nice, easier for testing and portability. Yeah. An in-memory repository would be nice for tests. Now, an in-memory repository is something that Entity Framework does support. You can convert and have it not convert. In your tests, you can tell it to use an in-memory version of the repository instead of SQLite. And we can look at doing that as we go back and build some unit tests. So, and actually, if somebody does know how to do that and they want to put together a pull request, of course, you're always welcome to do that, and that can help feed our next conversation around this. So, these repository interfaces, and let's just take a look at one. What's happened here is we've wrapped up some of those common interactions that we do to get, in this case, articles from our data repository, from our data store, as common methods that just return those objects. Now, I'm not going to get into whether or not these are specific, if these are good choices for method names, if we could simplify some of these. I'm not going to get into any of that today. I just want to focus on the refactoring of using this interface and the concrete repository behind it, and make sure that that's proper. And we can look at refactoring the repository interface into something simpler, smaller, more appropriate later. So the interface, it defines these simple interactions. And Nemanja asks, if something returns a task of T, should it have the async suffix? Yeah, that is a practice, a common practice that should be followed. And I am seeing we're returning a task, and these aren't async methods at this point, right? Thank you, Trader Mo, for the follow. Thank you, Bidin Labak? Biden Labak? Let me know how to pronounce that. Let's figure that out. Resharper will complain. I don't run Resharper, Unnamed Outsider. I would suggest that maybe we need a if this is a rule that we as a community want to agree on, that these should be right. Can you put async on an interface? Right, you can't put async on an interface. But the practice with star async should not be used anymore, in my opinion. Okay, why? That's an interesting opinion. Why do you think folks shouldn't use the async suffix, Joe Bun? Async by default. I can also see the discussion that because you're returning a task, you know that it's async. You know that it's, and the fact that it has async in the signature. So I can see that, and only if you do provide both sync and async. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that as a differentiator between the signature. If I wanted to enforce that rule, I would bring in for my methods, I would bring in a Roslyn analyzer to help enforce a build failure scenario. But the interesting thing about Roslyn analyzers is it will not fail your unit tests. It won't fail your build, right? It'll just give you warnings. Style cop kind of evolved into what Roslyn analyzers do. Yeah, async does feel redundant. 7 ineffective coding habits of many programmers. Well, that's interesting. So, so for right now, I'm not going to go into this, into the naming of it, but so far, get article by slug, get article by ID, get article by comment. That's interesting because a comment object. Now, why is it ID? Why do we have ID article there? Because we have article, and it should. Jordy Stew, thank you for the subscription, and of course, all the subscriptions that folks use here, and Jordy used his Twitch Prime. I'll match and we'll make a donation to our friends at Girl Develop It. So, as long as you're consistent across the project, I agree, Kevin. Cake projects will fail on code style violations. Well, that's interesting. Convention should be followed, but not every project needs the same conventions. If lazy loading is on, even then, this should be article ID, not ID article. But this should be generating and managing it for us if lazy loading is turned on. Where is this used? In the details page and in... Why is this used in the details page? On post, article equals... So if they've posted a comment... if they've posted a comment, it shouldn't be it shouldn't need. We should have the article here as well. Okay. I'm not going to dig further into that, but I do want to look at this. Get all articles paged. I don't think... Okay. Okay, we can... Like I said, we can look at some of this. Get latest articles. This is an IEnumerable, but this one is a list. This should be an IEnumerable as well. For consistency. Um, if I forget to await an async function, the IDE will show me a warning, so unless you use Notepad for editor, I don't see a problem. Yes. I didn't change anything other than changing context to repos. The ID article and other stuff was already there. Oh. Style Cop Analyzers is a style cop for new SDK style projects. There you go. Okay. Hokie, thank you for the follow. I appreciate you joining us. So, I'm not going to criticize where we are with this. We'll look at potentially refactoring later. But the article repository, clearly, you know, it's a list of things that we're going to use, and you can see there's a bunch of references to these. If I go over to my core wiki project, and I look in startup, here's the database mappings right here. So whenever we need an iArticle repository, it's going to provide the SQLite implementations of these things, right? This is dependency injection giving us exactly what we need to work abstractly with the interface, right? And we'll get the concrete implementations of these things. So there are 19 places that this is referenced, and I can click that 19 references and see the complete list of them. And I'll just pop that down here. And this is using a tool in Visual Studio 2017 called CodeLens. CodeLens is also available for you in Visual Studio Code. This is one of those really great features that at first I thought, that's kind of stupid. Why do I need this little help bit right here? But now I can't live without it. It's really cool. Spacebar is a defect is here today, and I see he's using his spacebar very efficiently. Thank you, Spacebar is a defect. What settings do I use for tabs? I use 2 spaces so that I can fit more code on screen. Thanks for the follow, German Sack? Germans AK? And thank you, Fishlord, for the follow. I don't know if people are out there recruiting, trying to get me to do this rainbow beard thing, but it's quite nice in Visual Studio Code. Yes, it is unnamed. It actually works great for JavaScript projects in Visual Studio Code. I haven't tried it with Python or other languages, but there is a language service there that could be configured to light up those capabilities in Visual Studio Code. So we have this interface out here, and here's all the places that it's being used. And what I want you to see is let me go to the details page, because I think this is kind of like the prototype place that you'll see this kind of thing being used. And so we have a details model here. Wow, we've got a lot of folks joining us here this morning. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Very cool. Thank you so much, everybody, talking about this out on Twitter. Awesome. All right. They want that rainbow. I noticed that the other day, that when people actually Google spacebar is defect because they can't type spaces, I show up all over the place. Okay. So open window, just to finish my comment on what I use for my tab settings. Shoot, there's an editor config here. It's in the core wiki project. We probably need to move it up now to the solution level. But this is a configuration file that Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, and other text editors will use to help enforce capabilities and formatting of your code. And you'll see I use tab indent style and trimming trailing whitespace, insert final new line. And then when I'm coding here in Visual Studio, I use 2 spaces. That way I can fit more code on the screen. And if I take a screenshot for something, more code will fit in than if I use 4, or I even had a colleague that used 8 space tabs. And I mean, it was just gigantic how far across. He needed a really wide screen in order to fit all of his code on there. Right, if he wrote a simple for each statement, it wouldn't fit on the screen on his little screen, so you needed a real wide. That's a code joke, okay. But he did use 8 space. I do not see spaces equals 2 for tab. So you don't put that in editor config, otherwise it confuses editor config. But if you look in your configuration here, tab, I use block indenting, and I keep tabs at a size of 2. There you go, Thren. Absolutely. I'll be here all week. Julio Cruz, thank you for the follow. Sir, are you guys trying to get me to 5,000 today? I mean, I know our friends at Twitch are enjoying my streams, but hey, you know, we don't need to get to 5,000 today, guys. All right. So this is one of our Razor pages that's now using our repositories here, and you can see it's now referring to that article repository, comment repository, and slug history repository generically, right? So that I'm not directly coupled to that database implementation, and I can even click on this button here and see that change that was made to this method. This is kind of cool. Visual Studio will let me click into this, and it'll actually show me, right? So there's the commit. I want to find the diff on this. I thought there was a way to just see the change. So here's all changes in the file. I thought there was a way to just get a diff on this one. My view commit details, and then there's the details on it, but I wanted to see just the changes on this. Compare with previous. There we go. That's what I wanted. So here's what it looked like previously. Let's open this up just a little bit. So previously we were receiving directly that database context, the entity framework implementation that was tightly coupled to our database. And instead, we're now receiving these 3 separate interfaces that allow us to abstractly reference and interact with those things. So that's the difference between the two, between what's going on here, right? So now, right, I can, for unit testing, I can submit any type, right? I can mock these out and submit something that looks like an article repository and make it behave like it for the purposes of testing. Looks like Core Wiki article history. Yes, it does, Ashley. That was the inspiration for that feature that we implemented, right? For those of you that haven't seen, in this wiki, you can actually look at the history of articles, the change history, and you can do a diff, and you'll get this type of format presented to you. It's really cool. Another question, can you explain why you used iDisposable on iArticle repository interface? Open window, you know what? I haven't looked at... So iDisposable is attached to this just to make sure that those database references that this is using in the background are released, right? Ensure those things are released before any changes, to make, right, handle memory, that type of thing. Do you have thoughts on generic repositories? iRepository of article versus iArticle repository. That's an interesting question. Let me answer that, and then we'll go look at some of these other implementations and specifically go look at that edit question that we had. So the concept of a generic repository, standby reloading is suggesting, I'm just going to call this class because I'm going to delete this. So there's this idea of a generic repository where this is an interface where you have something that looks like iRepository of T, and you might even see folks do something like interface, right, DB object, and it has an ID property on it. Okay, and actually it's not even set; it's just get. And then you'll see this something like this. Oh my gosh, Retry Life. Take some bits on board. Thank you, Retry Life. I appreciate those bits. Of course, I'll match those and we'll make a contribution to Girl Develop It. Thanks so much. So the generic repository has then methods on it, right? Because we're using this generic type of T. The interface looks like something like this, right? So we have a method that says go get that object by the ID, and we're going to pass in an int. And then, right, you'll also have a save method. Thank you for the follow. Is that D Goods? Welcome. And you know, updated object. Right? What am I? There we go. And then you might have a delete, right? And looks something like that. And then what you end up with folks doing is they'll implement a repository, right? Article repository. And instead of it just being that, it'll be an I repository of type article. Come on. And it's actually not going to do it because it doesn't implement. Oh no, maybe I will get it. There we go. Right, and then these act appropriately returning those things. But the idea is you're able to generically refer to and create these repositories because they have a very similar architecture here. Yeah, article isn't an IDB object. You're right, Nemanja. So I understand what C17 is saying about it is a little bit of over-engineering. But what I think is interesting is you could effectively have a base repository. A base repository of type T, and then you have the default implementations to go get by ID, to save an updated object. And then you end up with a concrete class that implements base repository of type article. And now those default implementations are all done for you. You don't need to think about it. You've already got the simple get by key, save, and delete methods already built for you. And then you can focus on some of those other more business-oriented ways that you're going to interact with your data. So as an implementation pattern, I like this concept. As an interface pattern like this, I think it may be a little bit of over-engineering. But you end up effectively back into this model, and you still want to have this as an iArticle repository because you want to hang all of those other business-specific methods on it. Just using that base class that has the default CRUD interactions built for you just simplifies and means there's 4 less methods that you need to write. What do you think? Is that a good answer? Asterisk 6. I see what you did there. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate that. So let me know. I think that's I like the idea of a generic repository, but I think the implementation of a base repository is much more valuable than a generic repository. All right. So I'm going to get rid of that class 1 hanging out there, and we can talk a little bit more here. I have a T4 template that will create iRepo of T for all entities in the solution. Anytime the iRepository interface changes or we add a new entity, we auto get concretes for those. so there's something to be said for generating code, because at some point you're going to want to regenerate code, right? And that can be valuable. That's a problem that you're going to run into. So your mileage may vary. This is quick for a simple CRUD app, but I don't like seeing in enterprise solutions. No, I think, actually, Brave Cobra, I think there's something to be said for a base implementation, a standard implementation, for those three or four default interactions that you're going to do with your repository. And, right, nothing's saying, right, if... oh boy. Nothing is saying, right? Let me just create the class here again. Right, if I have public virtual class, base repository of type T, oh boy, right, and I have public virtual, right, right, T, create, return new T, which also means that I need to say where T, new, that's right, public T, get by ID, int ID, and I'm just mocking this up, right? If I have these default implementations here, it's something that I've already got and I can already run with and I'm already pretty comfortable with. And then when I have my article repository, right, then this is a base repository type article, right? I've already got these methods created, and if I have some restriction where you're not allowed to, right, right, if I have public virtual void delete int ID, right, I can always override here and override delete and say throw new exception to prevent that from happening. So there's things there that I think you can discuss, you can implement differently depending, your mileage may vary. Try to avoid generated code at all costs. T4 templates were horrid. There is a place for generated code. It's a boilerplate. It's a boilerplate. It's a place to start from. Virtual reality class. What about DTOs and entities? Should the repo just return the entity, or you can do the select on your DB sets and return the DTO type? So, CJ Aliaga, I think you should return the DTO type, not the entity, because if you return the entity, now you're coupled to a database implementation. And there's a business object there that makes more sense for you to pass around. And when we talk about things like domain-driven design, you're going to want to pass around a DTO, maybe even your aggregate root that you're interacting with, not those specific data implementations. If we do get into things like event storage, you're not going to want to pass around the event. You're going to want to pass around the hydrated version of that, the full realized concrete object instead. So that's where I would change things up there. I think auto-generation can be used for good. I agree. And we're doing that for a good part of our templates and things here. D Goods says, I'm new at the C, C++, C# scene. I'm actually learning C++ to learn better how things work at a lower level. I come from Python and started a const int week ago equals 7. What? I started at learncpp.com, so you're experienced enough to say to me if it's a good page or not for learning C++. Thanks a lot and greetings from Spain. PD, I think in English we say PS. I know you are programming on C#, but you're the one that I find most entertaining. Oh, thank you. I appreciate the comments there, D-Goods. Let me know if I'm pronouncing your avatar correctly there. Is it D-Goods? That looks like, looks German. That's the only reason. No problem. All right. I'm not familiar with Learn CPP. I'll let the folks in the chat room comment on that. Rhinosaurus, it depends on the percentage that don't have all default implementations. If most do, but only a couple don't, you can always overload and throw an exception. Yes. You think repos should return the entities and your services should be responsible for turning DTOs. Ah, now you're getting into a multi-layered architecture. If you have services that sit in front of those repositories, I can go either way. I would lean towards returning something that's specific to your business and not a database implementation from a service. Something that's service specific, that, like I said, so you're not coupled to a database storage implementation. I use T4 to generate more than 10,000 lines of protocol parsing code base on a 50-line XML file. Works quite well. Well, alright. Exceptions are exceptional. Where do the repository interfaces come into play? Which methods are declared in the base? Great question, the Simeon. Let's talk about that. So we have not implemented a base repository in this. And that's okay for right now. I'm not concerned about that. The interfaces come into play in each of our pages here, and we specifically wanted to look at the edit pages, the one that we were being asked about. Now, on the edit page, you see we're receiving an iApplication.db context, which is kind of a misnomer. This interface is being used on the application.db context. So we're abstracting away the entity framework implementation with an interface that has the exact same implementation, which means I'm still coupled to entity framework, which doesn't help me too much. But the article repository we pass in here. So with this design architecture, what this means is we're receiving an article repository that we can use to generically refer to and do our interactions with the data store, right? I don't necessarily have to know exactly what my database looks like. So there is no base repository yet. You don't have lazy loading going on everywhere. Yes, agreed, the Simeon. So lazy loading, for those of you that aren't familiar, is a practice, it's a feature of object relational mappers where you request one object and the related objects are attached to it, but they only become available to you when you request that property. So in our article object, I don't have Karnak running. Let's get Karnak running here. So in our article object here, we have a reference to the collection of comments. Now, if I'm using lazy loading inside my project here, let me find the, so here's an article object. If I was using lazy loading, at the point that I say article.comments, right there on line 60, at that point that line executes is when the SQL query would fire to go load those comments and attach them to my article object. That's lazy loading. The challenge that folks run into is you'll end up triggering requests to the database when you least expect it. So the suggestion that some folks are making in the chat room is let's fully hydrate, let's fully create and attach that property appropriately when we know we're going to be using those properties, those collections that come from another database object. And you can do that in Entity Framework using an include method. That'll include it, and that'll make sure that those objects are attached, and it generates only one database request instead of having multiple that fire when you may or may not expect it. So that's what I want to keep an eye out for here. All right, EF Core doesn't support lazy loading. It does now, Franklin. Yes, EF Core 2.1 doesn't. And that gets really fun with JSON serialization. Yes, it does. Because you may end up with references, circular references, which become just a little bit crazy to manage. All right. All right. I'm going to retweet that real quick. Thank you, Kevin, for the mention there on Twitter. All right. Let me see, just keeping an eye on things. Here we go. So the interfaces are being used here, but this is the one coming back to our pull request here. Need to refactor application DB context out of this. There's a lot going on here that's a little confusing. So here's what I'm going to do to kind of expose where we're using this, where we can start thinking about getting rid of it. I'm going to chop the object here, right? So now I'm going to get these red dots. You see the red dots in the scroll bar over here? These are where the errors are. And the first one, of course, is where it was storing that property, that parameter that was being passed in. So we'll get rid of that, and that solves that red dot. Now down here is another one. So here's where it's doing a save. Hey, Fierce Kittens, good to see you. I think I'm going to bring back up what we talked about at the top of the stream here with Fierce Kittens. So some of the other folks in the chat room brought up the 5,000 follower rainbow beard topic that I mentioned on Twitter, and the idea being, if we get to 5,000 followers by the middle of October, for Halloween, for the end of the month of October, the October 30th, 31st show, I will dye my beard rainbow. The goatee. And I think it's a silly, fun idea. I'm not sure whether we should do it. I've got to make sure it's okay with the boss, with the wife. I don't know. So I've got to think that through. So, yeah, that could be kind of crazy, could be kind of weird. We'll see. So, back to our repository discussion here. What Emo's running into is right here on line 76. We do a context attach and say this entity has been modified. What this does is it tells Entity Framework, here's the article, and it's been modified, so it knows to run an update statement against the SQL database. So it is Fierce Kittens. Yes, Fierce Kittens is here. Wisest words from a husband. I have to think that through when referencing the wife, or talk to the boss. Go back to HQ. The CO has something to say on that. You'll hear, particularly military folks, the commanding officer. Yes. There's a thing there. Don't make them mad. So here's what I'm thinking, Emo. Looking at this, we shouldn't need this statement in our code. We should be able to trigger this and do this in the concrete repository when we actually save the article. And right now you're still doing that here, directly referencing and using Entity Framework. Every time you say Emo, I think Emo Landworth. Ah, okay. The Chancellor of... Do you pronounce that Shakur? Ask my better half. There's another one. Yes. Alright, let's take a look further in here. Oh my gosh, look, Lita Gemini is here. Hey, how's it going there? I'm just looking at the list of folks that are in the chat room right now. Wow, I'm thrilled you're all here. I hope you check out Lita Gemini a little bit later today. If you're watching on the Visual Studio channel, we'll pick up and broadcast her a little bit later. She's working on some game development with Unity and C#. She's working on a role-playing game. Might have to punt the code stream to tomorrow. Okay. Keep an eye on the Visual Studio stream, because we will showcase when she's working on her game, but she's building a new role-playing game from scratch. If that's something you're interested in, if you're in the gaming industry, fierce kittens, you might want to tune in and check it out. So tomorrow at 1. Fantastic. All right. So this is an interesting problem. This is something that folks run into when they are building repository and they're converting from a direct reference of the object relational mapper. How do I continue to do these things when I'm inside a repository, when I'm referencing a repository? Where do I break that abstraction? So I'm also going to open the article repository here. And let's put this side by side so we can kind of see what's going on. Now, the article repository should have some sort of a save method on it, and I don't see it. Okay, so there's our first refactoring that we're going to do here. Is I'm going to create an update article method here. And let's do that right here. Let's make this if it's an update, I'm going to let it throw an exception. And let's just call it update, and we will receive an article, and sure, we'll call it article. Now, my concrete repository needs to implement that method. That's why we have a red line appearing now. So I'll control dot and get it to implement that interface. And if I scroll down here, there's my update statement now. So I can actually write this interaction to do the update. Let's see. I'm in Philadelphia area. Yep. No ASP.NET community stand-up this week. Okay. What else? I would suggest that save should not be part of the interface. Why not? You should have to call update, insert, delete, and those should call an internal save method. Well, that's right. I'm writing that internal save method here. I'm naming it update so that we know that it's it's actually going to push that right into the repository, and I can also take all of my article history logic and move it in there as well. So, right, and you can clearly see where Entity Framework is kind of leaking into my page here, right? Things like the attach statement here, that's an Entity Framework consideration that I shouldn't have to do in my page. And the article published, get current instant, that's something that we could wrap up in our save, but I'm not going to get too dogmatic about that. I would only do that if the repository is for more than database, Redis or something. I think they have to figure out a new setup, so it has, okay. Just to make sure that your services don't have a direct call to dbcontext.save. Yes. Ashley asks, what's my opinion when moving towards CQRS? CQRS is an architecture, command query, responsibility segregation, or separation, about having a generic type in the interface which allows you to specify which view model to return. And that's a screenshot of a cell phone. What's that look like? It is segregation? That's what I thought. But I've heard people use separation as well. Ditching, that's not a cell phone. Ditching abstractions, and you're returning, it's a request handler that returns the view model, specifies the view model. This is something that Mediator does very nicely. I don't see a problem with that. That makes sense to me. That makes a lot of sense to me. It does improve testing capability, yes. And I think you're going to see a little bit of that type of design come in here. But this attach and save, we're going to end up moving those capabilities over into here. And this idea, add new article version, right, where it's adding clearly into that context. Yeah, Ashley, you're right. Got that one wrong. I can see why it thinks it's a cell phone, but it's not. All right. I'm going to bring add new article version into this. All right, I'm going to remove this from over here. We don't need this over here. Thank you. And, right, create should be doing that also. Yep. So I can actually, I should be able to just do, yeah. I don't even need to cut. I can just copy this one line. That one. So at some point we do need to do that. Okay. Private bool article exists. Don't we have an article exists over here? I thought there was on the repository and exists. Is topic available, but I don't have an exists. Let's add a method for that as well. And int ID. All right. And we can add that easily. Public task bool exists int ID. All right. Context articles any. And I believe, yep, I can do any async. Let's make this async. And do that. Why dispose the context in the repository? It is injected by DI, and the DI container should handle the lifetime. Well, the repository, you know what? I hadn't thought about walking that all the way back. Just return the task. Yeah, okay, let's do that. And then I can remove this. So now I've got one less reference to that context. And then I can, over here, right, because I have that article repository here, let's not call it that. Let's call it, it's the only repository here, so let's just call it repo. Make it nice and short. Excuse me. So I can now say repo.exists. Now, because I'm not awaiting that, oh, got a number of folks from DC. Now, because that equals, no, not equals, that should be exists. Ugh. Right. Cool. Okay. So now we'll figure out if that actually is there. And I can move on here. Here, these are my save things, right? Add new article version. I don't need that anymore here. We've gotten rid of that. Actually, let's comment that out, just so we remember that it's there. But after article new version is where we're actually going to do this. So let's remove that. Okay. Change this to context. And now I can actually change this to repo exists. So if it, hang on, this should be now. All right, so now I do need to make this async because I am awaiting in here, right? Now, article not found result is, right, this is, I need to throw an exception appropriately for this so that I'm returning that appropriately over here. So we will come back to that in just a minute. Let's do a try around this. Right, so repo.update. Come on now. And I think I want to do it like that. Article not found exception. Return article not found result. Now, it doesn't know what this is yet. Article not found result. I thought that was a thing over here. Oh, I have to put a new in front of it. And now that goes away. All right. And I don't... Sure, we'll do a... not else. So otherwise it'll just throw and it'll bubble up. That's fine. But we still need to get rid of this. Return... Throw new article not found exception. And now I can create a new class. Let's go find that. It's an exception. And we could fill this out with other information. I'm going to skip that for right now. We'll build that appropriately. This should find it now. Come on. Build succeeded. This should be a thing that it found. Article not found exception. Oh, it made it internal. Make that public. And this should go away. There we go. All right. Oh, did it put it in the wrong place? Where did it put the article not found? It put it under repositories. I'm going to move that up to the root here. Rovni Pancan, thank you for the follow, Rovni. I appreciate you joining us. I look forward to seeing you in the chat room. Okay, that still works. Good. All right, so we need to await the update. Good. Now, all this goo up here, there's got to be a way to simplify this. There's got to be a way to make it a little bit easier here. Let's see. So, URL friendly, add model error. So, if the topic is available, if it is not, hang on, is topic available? If that comes back true, we're going to add a model error. This topic already exists. That doesn't make sense. Is topic available? If that's true, I think we may want this to be that we may want to flip this. If the topic is not available, then add a model error. Brave Cobra is saying, why not return a task of type Boolean instead of throwing exceptions? Exceptions are expensive. And specifically, you're looking at the update method that I just wrote there. Because there's a couple different ways coming out of here, right? I'm going to have an update concurrency exception. I'm going to have an article not found. I may have other database exceptions. It does work correctly. Let me come back to your question. Open window. So the comment is topic available? So if that comes back true, you're going to add a model error? Right, so if the topic already exists, here. So articles where the slug matches the current slug and it's a different ID. We're going to add a model error that says the title already exists. That doesn't make sense. I think you have that backwards. Yeah, I can agree, Joe Bun. I'm not going to get into the naming just yet. I just want to get Entity Framework out of the project to start. I need to create a method to get data from multiple tables, A, B, and C, union all with a stored proc. Do you recommend a repository class with a method calling the stored proc, or call individual repositories? Wow. Here. I would think more towards having one repository that merges those three things together for you. Yeah, I would have one method that merges those three and you return the unified object. What's the difference between asynchronous programming and threading? Asynchronous programming is when you make a request for something and you say, go do it in the background. I don't care if you start it if you run it on a background thread. I don't care where it runs. When it's done, execute this next bit of code. Threading is when you allocate threads explicitly and you say, go run this background task, but run it over here in this specific location. So asynchronous is more you're listening for a specific thing to come back and proceed from there. Let me just keeping an eye on something here. Please look at the diff on this one to see what I changed and what I didn't. No problem. Is that Fursbacky? Fursback. If it's checking the topic, why is it bothering with the article ID? It's just checking to make sure that it's not the same one. Okay. Here we go. Let's see what the boss says. Otherwise, it would barf on updating the current article. Yes. Yes, that's exactly what we're trying to avoid. No barfing. Okay. Let's look at where this was. So I'm going to come up here and use the history so we can take a look at this. I should be able, right? Should be able to go into this and edit, compare with previous. Here we go. I think she's into it. I missed the part where we're in the edit page, off brushing my teeth. I'm getting the feedback from the wife here. Maybe. I think there's a thing happening here. Excuse me. She doesn't want me to shave off the beard. So let's scroll down and look at the save method. So here's on post. So instead it's going against the article repository. It was doing, see there it is. If context articles any and it's a not. Yeah, this is backwards. Because context articles any right? Context articles any slug equals article slug and ID does not equal article ID. Yeah, this should be a flip. Welsh Ronaldo, don't you give my wife any ideas. I think we're on. I think we're on for the 5,000 follower challenge. I'm calling it. If we hit 5,000 followers by the middle of October, I will dye my beard. We'll do I think we're going to do a rainbow beard, all right? So yeah, this should be a not there. All right. So let's finish this. So this context attached state, entity state modified, I think we want to move that over here. Time to make a follow bot. Hey, stop that, Joshua. Don't you dare. I am not encouraging you to violate Twitch's terms of service. Context attach. Now, why is attach accepting a first argument of type IDB? I application DB context. Diet, I think you'll make it more lively. I see what you got there. I see what you did there. I think the context should actually be a full application DB context here. Which means that attach will now work. Now, that's fine if you do those after the attach. That's okay, I believe. And then here's the slug history. Existing article dot slug. Where's existing article? Can't you just say context article history update and save changes without the modified? Well, we need to do the attach. I think you're right. I don't think I need this part. I don't think. let's put that there. And so down here, when it does the check on the slug, right, this existing article, I worry about this. Hang on. We're getting the existing article. We're setting the view count. We're updating the version. It would change all properties and not just the ones that changed. That's fine, though. That should be fine. Right? If it's updating a value to the same value that it was, I don't care. Right? If I was actually tracking the updates on each individual field, I could see that, but I don't care. All right. So let's keep peeling this apart here. I've got one more red. Ooh. And it's here where it's doing this work on the slug. A Paradroth, thank you for the follow. 2735. Yeah, so if we double the followers by the middle of October, we'll dye the beard. All right. Articles to create. So this is fetching it. I feel like this should be in, right? Because all that we're passing is the old slug. We're not passing anything else about the existing article. I feel like this could be in that slug history repository. Make sense? So if we create a new method here on this repository, no, just make it a task and add to history string old slug article and that is an instant. We always just have the save, and if the article, do an article add. Hey Voxy, that's 17 followers this stream so far. You're counting? Else context articles update article save changes. Yeah. Where's that link? Trader Mo. What was your deadline for the 5K? Let's call it October 20. Let's call it October 20. All right. Here we go. Let's add it as an instant. You're gonna love it in an instant. Let's see. 23 followers a day to make that goal. Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot, and when we do workshops, we get a lot more than that. October 20 for 5,000 followers. It took us to July to get to 2,500. June. 6 months, 7 months. Workshops get more viewers too. Yes, they do. So, okay, are you guys making this? But Twitch doesn't update the followers in the top bar, but it updates on my stream, so it's easy to work out the difference. 2718 when I started watching. Ah, okay. Thank you for the follow, J. Ferrer, APT. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. I think if I pass, yeah, I think if I pass in the date time as a UTC, I think we're okay. So let's pass this as date time and call this no, you know what, I can do that right here inside of the repository. Elite Waffles, thank you for the follow. Seriously, how many of you are out there creating an accounts for this? I'm flattered if you are, but come on now. Come on now. I don't think we should have the constructor list. Where is... No, I'm sorry. I was in the wrong one. I need to look for the slug history. This one. Now I can add that new method. Right, to add to history, and I'll just write this method. Bring that over into here. Oh my gosh, Dark Matter Dev, thank you for the follow. I only rock one account. Good news is I'm slowly starting to understand what's going on in the code. Fantastic, Voxy. That's terrific to hear. Let's make that a lower. All right, so existing article.slug we've actually got now as old slug. And added, we'll, instead of updating added here, let's update added datetime to datetime.utc now. And I'm going to need a control space on that. Get my using statement. Context attach. That's fine. Really what I should be able to do here is not that, but context dot slug histories add, and then hang on. And then save changes, right? Okay. Do that. That's fine. Now I have a way to add that to history. So now over here, instead of doing this, I can receive an I slug history repository. And let's do that. Create this object. And now down here where I was doing all of this, I can just say, so the old slug is this. The article is just article. Done. So that works. I thought Balmer was going to be replaced. He's slowly going away. We're making him quieter and quieter. They wrung out the sweat from that shirt and cloned 10 more. No. So I think, all right, so that's done. So create article and history, that's fine. So our update is we're attaching the article, we're adding the article history, and then we're saving changes. I think that's all we need over here, and I think we've properly removed all of our context reference. Oh, I've got one red up here. Let's see how it builds. All right, I'm missing a comma. Oh. There we go. Jazai? Welcome. Thank you for the follow. I appreciate you joining us here. All right. I think that takes care of the challenges with that edit page. Aren't you updating the article before actually setting publish date properly? Looking. So there's the publish date right there, and it's updated down here. I think we're okay. I think we're all right. So I am going to... All right, so that was the one question. 7, commented out the seed method call. All right. Let me put in this commit. Right? That's kind of hiding behind my head. Let's move it over so you can see. Refactored to the edit page to repository pattern. Okay. Now the other question is about the seed method. Now the seed method is what we're using to generically provide initial settings in the database. So let's look for seed. Oh no. I found a bunch of JavaScript. I don't want JavaScript. There we go. So application DB context seed data, which is now over here in core wiki data. And there it is. We're commenting out the migrate. Now what's wrong with using that? Reference asks, you don't use control comma to search for your method. Valid point. While I was over here, I could have typed seed data and looked for the method and jumped right to it. I wasn't sure where it was commented out. What errored? What's this? What did I miss here? All right. Oh yeah, the Simian control comma will let you search for methods. It'll let you search for classes. Right, if I just search for article, look at all the references that it brings up. I've got objects, classes, properties that I can jump right into. On the article history object, it jumped to that property. So it's a pretty cool way for you to bounce around. Run it. Run it? I'll run it. I'll show you me running it. You can't get migrations without that seed data call. Yep. Bang. Unable to resolve service for type application DB context. All right. Unless you run them manually, yeah. All right, so over here. Okay, let's mute that. There we go. Instead of, so we changed this to add DB context pool to add an I application DB context and application DB context. I think I'm going to need. Add it to startup. Yeah, that's what I'm running into here. Norden Ramen. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate you joining us. I can add it as a scoped reference directly to application DB context. Right, and that's what that error is telling me, is that it's not available. Wait for what? I think I can get rid of this interface. This I don't think I really need. It's used in 8 places. inside of, I think it's all within the, oh no. Well, I could change, well, this is going to need to change. Here, create comment CSHTML is right. This is referencing the database context. This is going to need to change and reference a repository. Runs fine with the seed commented until you make more database changes. Yes. Yes, yes. All right, so let's... I thought I saw, yeah, there's a comments repository. This should become, instead of one of those, is it comments repository? Comment repository. This dot equals repository. Excuse me, coffee. Okay. Now, that doesn't make sense to me because we're not actually loading or creating anything with this. Right? This can go away entirely. So I think this is okay without that. Where else is that being used? 7 references now. Repository, startup. Okay. Is this context being used anywhere? It's being called here on seed data. That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I understand why it's... Yeah, let's... Alright, let's get rid of that. And then I can get rid of this. And really, I want to get rid of that. I don't think it's going to serve a purpose any longer. Now I can see everywhere that it breaks and go through and replace them with the concrete. There we go. So that's comment repository. That's fine. That's somewhere that I do want to receive and handle, right? That I'm managing that explicit connection. Let me open up and pin that error list. And this is in that repository as well. We can get rid of that. Cool. Done. So now it should continue to work. Let me unpin this. So I can get rid of that. Now, I do agree, this feels weird. And I feel like this is something that we're going to end up moving at some point. And I have a home page. Now, yeah, I don't have it doing the migrate right now, but it is loading and it sure looks like my content's working. This is a new article. Here is some new content. Create. Boom, because I'm not signed in. This is an issue we need to address. And actually, Ashley's already found this, and that's fine. It's at the point where it should be doing the right thing. Here is a new article while we are refactoring the repository and introducing the repository pattern. Kaboom. Good. Done. Back to home. Awesome. I usually end up with a bootstrapper project that can init the business data layer DI registration without the web project having direct knowledge of the database. You know what, standby reloading? I can see us putting some sort of initialize method. That's not startup. Having some sort of a add initialize method that takes care of this and these. Have that embedded inside of our data. Why don't we do that? Let's do that. I like that idea. You added the seed data to your migration, so you shouldn't need the seed in the startup. Well, you're going to need to do it the first time if it's not migrated. So, in AutoFac, you use a module to do that. The pre-startup that you can do that with. If you wanted to swap out application DB context to MongoDB context, yes. So what I'm going to do, startup extensions. Because this looks like it's working just fine. Startup. Services is an iService collection. Add SQLite data. This iService collection services. Right, now I can simplify that. I can go back over here and in my startup, and let's control dot on that. I need access to configuration. How do I get access? Oh, configuration is in our services collection. I could just get it. Right. Services dot. Right. I wanted to get a scope. Build service provider dot create scope. Service provider. Well, can I just say get service? Yes. I configuration, and I'm going to control dot and get that. And now I have configuration. Let's control dot on these, and control dot on that. Cool. Done. Semi at the end of that. Cool. What do you think? Why don't you just inject I configuration? Sure, I could do it like that. And then back over here. Services, add SQLite data, and then configuration. Configure the SQLite repositories and entity framework context to support it. Cool. What do you think about that? I think that's pretty cool. You know what? Let's call this add SQLite repositories. Just blew my mind. In a good way or in a bad way? Much cleaner. Brave Cobra approves. Brave Cobra approves. Look at that. All right. I won the bonus round. You could do the same for the business layer registration. Business layer, yes. I could do it also for all my notification goo here. I think we need to do something like that for a lot of these things. Yes. Oh, I completely agree. Look at that. Lita Gemini's laughing. All right. I've gone to the bonus round. I'm doing well. I'm feeling good. All right. So, did that do that to me? I nagged too much? No, you don't nag too much. Brave Cobra, I see you as somebody that I strive to get your approval on design. I think you have a very good eye for how the technical design should be structured here, and I very much value your input. You do a terrific job at saying, oh, you know what, you've over-engineered some things, and you've rightfully so caught us a couple times and said, ooh, we're overthinking this, and the fact that I got it the first time, I'm feeling pretty good about that, and Ric Flair is too. I think I pester him way more. Maybe. And you blew it! I did not. All right. But I can, so to the comments, I see the notification bits here. I think this is something else that we can move out into another library for testing and to put it someplace that is a little bit easier to work with. Please explain a scenario where you would use iApplication DB context. I'm not sure I would. I don't think there's a place where I would throw an interface directly in front of my entity framework core, because as somebody mentioned earlier, and I'm not sure if it was Ashley or who it was, there are ways for us to change the provider, the underlying data provider used by entity framework core, to use a memory database. So those places where you might want to use an interface to swap it out so you could indirectly reference entity framework, you can force into that model, right? Into a in-memory store for the purpose of that. Isaac asks, curious, is there a best practice about how busy startup is? It freaks me out a little bit too. There is, right, as somebody who looks at code and says there should be 7 lines of code in a method, right? 7 lines. 7 lines is plenty. Knowing full well that if you write an if or a for loop, you've chewed up 3 lines just between if, first curly brace, and the last curly brace. There's 2, and there's a middle line in there somewhere for at least that first bit of logic. There's 3 lines of code. You've got 4 more to go. 7 is a pretty good number. You go beyond 7 and you start to get some really complicated methods. And that's what I'm seeing here. This is getting really complicated. So we're setting up the configuration here for, right, so I get my concrete app settings. I'm okay with this being in there, right? And just looking through and reconsidering this, because this configure services method starts on line 37 up here and ends down on 87. It's 50 lines of code. That's a lot of code. I could definitely see moving our MVC configuration here. I could see moving this out somewhere else. Like I said, I could see this being isolated and moved into its own notifications project. Cookie policy I'm okay with. This kind of needs to be here. This kind of needs to be here. Yeah, that would simplify a couple things for us. So, Reverend says, always code to an interface, does not compute. So we actually had a story, we had a session at MVP Summit this year, I can talk about this, where we have an opportunity for MVPs to present some of their best stories, whether they were successes with .NET and Visual Studio or their failures. But they're able to present those directly to some of the vice presidents, some of the folks who are responsible at the top level for these products. So folks like Scott Hunter, you've seen Scott here on stream with me, but our friends John Montgomery, John's responsible for most of Visual Studio and the presentation of the product. He's the executive in charge of this. Great guy. If you see him on Twitter talking about the stream, let him know how much you enjoy using Visual Studio. And let him know you heard about it from me. But some of these folks, MVP's got a chance to give a 5-minute presentation showing here's some things that we saw that people run into, and it's really a way to get that feedback at a high level and figure out what can we do to improve the story. And there were one of the MVPs presented a story where there were interfaces all over this one application, and it was being built for Xamarin, so it needs to be compiled down really small to run on someone's phone. And when you think about that, you need to minimize the amount of code you're writing. So it created a lot of overhead. It created a maintenance nightmare because you want to make things small, tight, compact, and efficient. You don't want to use dependency injection when you're working on a Xamarin application, typically, because you do want that on a phone to be really tight. You're not going to be swapping out things frequently. It's not an enterprise application that's going to be growing and maintained for 15 years. You're going to end up rewriting chunks of it quickly in a phone application. So, how do you reconcile 7 lines of code with something like new article? That's 1 line of code when you create a new object like that. You're just wrapping, right? You could make that 1 line. More like 7 statements. Yes. I'm working and watching at the same time, building a more flexible backend. There's absolutely a scenario. So it looks like we've done some nice refactoring here. This looks like it's running nicely. I really like introducing this add SQL-like repositories. I think that really starts to move us further into getting out of managing things and having a direct entity framework reference inside of our object. And of course this still works. There it is, loading properly. And actually, let's go down here to that seed data. You know what? Let's get rid of this also. Let's get rid of that. Let's move these out. Right, and we're even doing this bit here. Anybody know advanced open source project with .NET Core and Angular for learning? I don't. Shane Boyer and his team were working on an Angular Heroes implementation for exactly that purpose. Take a look at that. I think you might find something interesting there. Let's see if we can take these 3 and wrap them up into another little bit of our extension object here, and then we'll call it a day. So let me close that one. Here. So let's public static. Now we're in at the app at this point. We're in application builder. So we need to get access to these 2. And actually, the identity object is still embedded in here. So, you know, we're not going to be able to completely get rid of this. And create scope returns an iService scope, but this is an iService provider. Does that deserve to be middleware, or would you consider what you've built already to be middleware? I have it. So this isn't middleware here, right? That's not middleware, right? That's just wrapping up how we're configuring our dependency injection. These things where we're modifying how the HTTP request is handled, that is middleware. Tour of Heroes Angular app with .NET Core backend. There you go. Yeah, take a look at that. That should help. So, you know what? I can't completely remove Entity Framework yet, so I'm going to leave these 2 here for right now. Even though application DB context is now a concern of just the data. Yeah, you know what? Let me just make that real quick. iService provider seed data. This iService provider service provider. So I have this. So let's take that. Service provider. Right, and now we can do that instead here. And then return service provider. Okay. This should be the context. Fetch like that. That'll do it. All right. So now oh, I do need a scope, don't I? Rats. Create scope creates an iService scope. Let's change this to iService scope. Service scope, which should still work. iService scope. Right, now why isn't it? Yeah. What doesn't I like about that? Does not contain a definition for get service. I thought it did, right there. Oh, service provider. Cool. All right. So now I can take this and I can say scope dot, wait a sec. Yeah. Scope dot seed data. Oh, rats. We'll end up getting rid of that. It's coming. Anyone interested in an architecture DevOps stream? I want to have an example of a whole CI/CD pipeline implemented, but I might just as well do it on stream. Microservices, Kubernetes, CI/CD, release management, let me know if folks are interested in that. That is something that I have some folks talking about doing maybe in a September time frame. But that's a great idea, Brave Cobra. I think that's definitely something to be done. You know what? I'm gonna cheat. And let's do that. That works for me. All right. Git commit refactor the references to application DB context out of startup. Fantastic. All right, let's merge in what we got here and call it a day. What do you think? We've done a lot. Let's finish the merge here, and we'll get Emo some credit on the scoreboard there. I'll copy the checkout, merge, and push. That's all we're gonna do. Now wait, I deleted core. Oh yeah, in the merge because we moved it. All right, lots of topics you cannot master in a couple of hours. True. I really want to deep dive there and find what problem I encounter. Go for it, Brave Cobra. That's a great idea. You have found it good practice to keep your identity context and main DB context separate. Consider some of the challenges that folks have with security. Keeping, and I'm storing identity right now in a local database. It could be coming out of Active Directory. It could be coming out of Identity Server. It could be coming out of a number of different places. For right now, it is separate in a separate local database. But I think it's possible to move somewhere else. I imagine that when you're doing permission checking, you utilize both contexts at the same time. We could, yes. You can create user and role stores and make it easy to keep them separate. Nope, identity and EF separate, I think is a great idea. All right, so we push that up. There's the merge. And I shouldn't have the squash and merge here. That should have gone away. There we go. Fantastic. Thanks so much for the hard work on this. That's a lot in there. Happy to comment on and merge during the... What day is today again? I forget what day today is. 10th. During the July 10th stream. Awesome. Oh my gosh, we're almost out of Mario music. So there you go. We learned a little bit about repository pattern. We refactored, saw how repository pattern allows us to give us an abstract reference to our object relational mapper. So now all those things that are concerned about the database and the interactions and persisting that state, they're all maintained in another place that can be specific about that. And my application is now focused on just working with those business objects. Now, we are still working with the same entities that are stored in the database. So in the future, we'll refactor that so that we get concrete entities coming out of those objects, out of those repositories, and have those database objects, those data entities that are managed by our database, let them all live inside of that data project. And this way, as we continue to refactor, our business objects stay business objects, and how they get built and hydrated from the database maintain the responsibility of the data project. All right. Had to take a business call and missed almost the whole thing. That's okay, because, man, spoiler alert, going on to my next line. I'm going to archive off the show here today, and we'll have it available for you over in YouTube. That's all the time I've got for today. This was a great stream today. I'm really happy with how far we came with everything. I shared a link out to our storefront out there. Let me put that back up in case anybody missed it. There's a Works on My Machine sticker. You can get it on a mug. The hat isn't available yet. But here's the link for it. Redbubble.com/people/C#Fritz. Can someone post that in the chat room for me? And if you're interested, I know some folks were saying, I'd love to get that on a mug or something. It's available for you out there. Oh, there you go. Look, I can write this into Twitch right here. My gosh. That's not it. Bad example. Pro streamer right here. Pro streamer. Let me tell you. Ugh. There you go. It's in the chat room. Alrighty. Cool. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. I will be back on Thursday. We've got some more work that we're doing inside the core Wiki repository. I want to take a look at the next step on that Git scoreboard. We've got it now pushing, thanks to our work on F# Friday. We've got it now saving from GitHub webhooks into a database. Let's look at refactoring that so we're now pulling from a database when those changes happen. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button here on the follow button here on Twitch if you're interested in getting notifications. And if you're over there on YouTube, hit the bell up in the corner. Hit the subscription. Let me know that you're interested in what we're doing. Write a comment on the video. Let me know what you're thinking. And I hope to see you on Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern. Take care.